to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Hi, and welcome to What Do You Want to Do? This is Leonard Kaplan here with another guest. This week, I've been waiting a long time for this one. Altagracia Nova, a musician and an actress living in New York City, making a living in New York City after having done so in Boston. Lifelong dreams coming true. She's making it happen. Let's go to that right now. Today on What Do You Want to Do? I've been waiting for this taping for so long. Altagracia Nova, who is a musician in New York City for not mainstream America, but for the Latino culture and for America. I've seen her on Univision. I've seen her on Telemundo. I've seen her all over the place and heard her all over the place. Altagracia, thank you for coming. So what do you want to do?
No, thank you for having me. Very grateful.
It's a lot of fun. Now, we were talking before I turned the recording on, and you said, you've known me for years and years and years. Well, that's technically true, but not really. We actually would see each other at events. Yes. And I know your cousins, right? Francis Nova and Fausto and Lydia Reyes.
My best friend, one of my best friends.
And Camilo, we can't forget Camilo.
Camilo, yes.
So all of those people I know really, really well, but I would see you and we would say hi. And I remember one particular conversation, we were talking about music, and I was in a band years ago, a Beatles band. I do a Beatles podcast now, as a matter of fact.
No way.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a link to that. And I was talking to you about music, and I was like really nervous because you were a professional, and it's just like I don't often get a chance to talk to too many people who have made it like you, because I told you I've seen you on these huge, and they have them in Mexico. These huge stages filled with hundreds of people, and you're like dancing and singing and doing all that stuff, and to do a podcast like this, I appreciate you doing it. I really do.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful to be with you, and definitely looking forward to having a nice talk with you today.
Yes, so am I. So consequently, I was a little nervous, so I never really asked you all that much. I remember us talking a little bit about harmony, and I think we were critiquing Camilo's group. I remember at Calidia's wedding, we were critiquing Camilo's group. He had released a single at the time, and that was really it. We just, we'd say hi and goodbye, and we'd say, well, goodbye, Anyway, but now this is my chance. I can find out what makes you tick, how you got into what you're doing, and where you get this positive attitude. You're always smiling. You're always up. I know that's not true with everybody has their private sides.
With the day-to-day of us, just the human race.
Yes. So you are from the Dominican Republic, correct?
I was born here. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. Yes.
Okay.
Dominican American. Absolutely.
Okay. So how did you get started in music? And did you always want to do it? And was there any resistance? I'm asking you 3 questions now. Was there any resistance on the part of your family? Because it's a very risky endeavor, I think, including to most families.
It's really funny because when I was little, I remember, I don't know if you've heard of this show, and I think you have, and you've probably watched it. Sabado Gigante. It used to air for many, many years, decades in Univision. And it's so funny because ever since I was a little girl, I would literally beg my parents to take me to the show. I wanted to be in the show. I wanted to perform. I wanted to sing and dance and do the whole 9. Yeah. And I remembered myself, even when I was 7 and 8 years old, literally slipping letters under my parents' bedroom, begging them to take me to the show because I wanted to perform so bad. I was that
Wow.
child that in every single family gathering and everything, I was always the center of attention, dancing right in the middle. There was tons of people around me and everything. And they would call me even when they wanted to, see action going. They're like, oh, bring Altagracia over here. We want to see her dancing. We want to see her doing her, her little act. And I would even create my own little talent shows. And I would ask everyone, well, what do you want to do? My cousins, my sisters, well, what are you doing today? Are you singing? Are you acting? Are you dancing? Are you, gonna recite a poem? What is it that you want to do? And I was literally responsible for putting it together. And sometimes I'd grab like a broomstick and, we'll call it the microphone. And that's how we used to perform for the entire family. So it was always in me. Like I remember someone asked me the other day, well, when did you know that you wanted to pursue, the entertainment industry, singing and acting and dancing? And I said, well, ever since I can remember, honestly, I don't recall a time that I didn't know that I wanted to do that, to be quite honest with you, even when I was a little girl. So there was never really any resistance. And I think I was blessed enough, because in my family, there were people who were dealing with the music industry. They had music bands, and I was constantly wanting to learn about each and every single instrument. Teach me about this. How do you play this instrument? Well, teach me about vocals. How do you actually harmonize? And this was always since I was a little girl, until finally my parents were like, okay, fine. My sister said, listen, you got to take her to singing lessons because she loves to do it and she's good at it. And finally, they decided to, take me to a singing school. And ever since then, I've been singing ever since professionally, thank God. So yes.
That's an amazing trajectory, because a lot of people, and I've interviewed a few of them, met with resistance, or their parents steer them in a certain way that they don't want to go. But it's tough, I mean, the music industry is tough enough without members of your family providing another roadblock. And in this case, it did not happen. So that explains, I think, you kind of radiate a confidence about you, and you always did, whether you're on TV or whether you're not. And that's really, I wish all kids had that background, because it just knocks barriers down, much, much easier.
Yes. I mean, I think it's really important to have role models too. And I actually did have that growing up. So I think that did help a lot, narrowing down what I really wanted to do. I always knew what I wanted to do, but the fact that I definitely had people in the family that were supportive of what I wanted to do, I think that played a major role too. That was very helpful.
So now, being born in America makes me ask the question, when you said you wanted to do music, how did you decide to do Latino music and not go in the mainstream route, mainstream America stuff?
To be completely honest with you, I always wanted to do R&B and pop. That's really what I wanted to do, and just, stick to the American market. It's interesting because when I started working with a lot of the musicians, when I was in New York and I started working with a lot of musicians, they were like, wow, your writing skills are very, very good. And they're, just as powerful, if not in, more even in Spanish, because I was able to, we would work on songs and I would translate them a lot of times. And they were, to them, it seemed like it was a lot more powerful. And they're like, oh my gosh, you should definitely pursue this lane. And of course, you have all the greats, you have like Ana Gabriel, you have Amanda Miguel. These were big legendary artists that I would listen to because, my mom was cleaning at home and, we were helping her clean and we would listen to this, music on blast, the Latino, way of cleaning, which was pretty fun. And I would listen to all of these songs and I would learn them. And that was always, I think that was one of the strengths, that because I had that in me, it just became something so natural when I decided, when the musicians that I was working with were like, well, listen, you should definitely work towards that lane a little bit more. Why not pursue that because you're very good at it and you have that background, you have that history. Of course, you're Latina. So I said, yeah, you know what? That's definitely true. I don't mind doing so. And then what grew out of that was Spanglish, was me, which I'm not sure, if a lot of people probably that are going to watch this are probably going to go to my songs and say, oh, let me probably hear a little bit of what she's done. You'll hear a lot of Spanglish. Like, for example, you in Independent Girl, which was a song that that came out in 2017, I believe it was, 2016, excuse me. It was Spanglish. It was in English and in Spanish. So that grew out of that, where I said, you know what, it would be kind of smart to kind of integrate both and to kind of mesh them in, the English and Spanish, and cater to both communities, both cultures. I think that would be kind of smart to do. And then I started doing that. And then it started working for me. It was captivating both the Latino industry as well as the American market as well, because they were able to understand and so forth. So that's how, I came about that.
So how would you describe your music? Is it merengue? Is it salsa? Is it bachata? Or is it reggaeton? Or is it a blend?
It's I would categorize it as urban, with pop influences and Latino influences, definitely. Because I always try to incorporate. I think it's so pretty cool that when you listen to merengue or you listen to bachata or you listen to salsa, those instruments, they're very dear to me, because when I was a little girl, I would dance to them all the time. So I feel like, okay, why not incorporate some of those instruments with pop, for example, or urban, if that's the case? Because when you say reggaeton, I consider it to be more along, I don't necessarily consider it reggaeton, but yes, there are some of those influences in them. For example, one of my songs, Palabras, that's like a reggaeton, but then you mix it up with some urban sounds and pop sounds and so forth. And, and that's what you get out of that. But I consider it urban.
Let's go back to Sabado Gigante. And now by the time you were a performer, I think that was gone. Isn't that correct?
It's funny because it's like, I believe in manifesting, definitely believe in manifesting. And I think that because I wanted to go to that show for so long, since I was a little girl, it's funny because the last year that show took place was the year that I actually participated in Viva la Diva, which is a segment in the show. It was a pretty popular segment in the show, Viva la Diva. And then there were about 12 contestants, and I was one of them. And everyone was basically, being a well-rounded entertainer, singing, dancing, even acting and so forth, creating their own shows and everything. And I was one of the artists that was asked to be a part of that. And that was the last show that Don Francisco was doing, the last year, actually, the last season.
No kidding. Wow. Now, how did I happen to ask that question? That's crazy.
It's funny, but when I looked back, I said, no way. Like the following year, there was no other Sabado Gigante because it was done. It was gone. And Sabado Gigante has, I believe it had over 3 decades in Univision, if I'm not mistaken, ever since I was a little girl. I think maybe 4 decades that it was on Univision. So that was actually pretty interesting how I became a participant. And I was performing for about 4 or 5 months. I was with them the last year that the show aired.
And did you ever get to interact with Don Francisco himself?
Absolutely. Oh, he was lovely. He loved my work. So I was very grateful. I was always so humbled and grateful because he was always complimenting my work. He was always very excited when it was time for me to perform. He'll always start making jokes like, "Oh, here she goes to steal the show."
That's
and I
amazing.
just thought it was so funny. So it was a really, really pleasant opportunity. I really got to meet him. He was a hardworking man, and I was very amazed at how fond he was of my work and my work ethic.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He passed away, didn't he?
I don't think he passed away yet. He did stop doing the show, and I don't know if he's in Chile right now. but I don't know that he passed away because I would have heard about it.
Okay.
So I don't know that he's passed away.
I'm not rushing him, believe me. Believe it or not, I used to have that on in the house because my mother likes that all kinds of, she likes, her favorite is mariachi stuff. And he would have playing
Yes,
mariachi
had
acts
a lot
on.
of it.
And
Yes,
it's funny because, we're not Latino background or anything like that, but she watches the Spanish soaps, the telenovelas, and she watched Don
yes.
Francisco, and she was upset when that went off the air.
Yes,
So,
a lot of people were upset in the Latino industry. You're talking about over 272 million viewers that would watch it
yeah.
all over, Central America. I mean, South America, everywhere. It was watched, worldwide. So it was a bummer when the show went off air.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm thinking of Vicente Fernandez. He passed away.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And that
Oh,
was
may
my
he rest
mother's
in peace.
favorite. If I had my real background here, I've got posters of Vicente in the background.
What
here.
a legend. What a beautiful career he had. What a beautiful career.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely
He was
so.
outstanding.
I want to talk about your songwriting because I write songs. No one ever hears them. You write songs and everybody hears them. And I want to hear what your process is like and how you came to it. Everybody has their own method of doing things, from the inspiration, the way they record it, or maybe just remember it, or playing it on an instrument, or playing it a cappella, singing it, all the way up until when you're recording in the studio. I want to know what your process is and what led you to start songwriting.
I'm going to be very honest to you. When I was in middle school, I would, and I was always a straight A student, advanced classes and everything. So that was a blessing. But when I was in middle school, I remember vividly that I would take out I had a journal. Every girl had her own, diary and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this journal / diary, I like to call it. And during class, I would start writing songs. It would just thoughts would come to me and I would just write. And I even before then I would write, but when I started, obviously when you're in middle school is when you start kind of finding yourself a little bit more and learning more and writing more and everything. And that happened to me. So I think that it's always been something where I love to write, because even in school and high school or college and so forth, my professors and my teachers always wanted me to become a writer. So I said, yes, I'm going to write. I want to write books. Yes. But first I want to write my songs. And that's, where my focus was, just writing my songs. And it's interesting because some people have a certain way of doing things. I can be at a studio and I like to be very much involved in my music. So if I am in the studio with a producer, you better believe I'm co-producing. So the majority of my work, it's co-produced and I'm involved. I'm just as involved. And when I say majority, I'm talking about 99, 98%. It's very rare that a song did not get an inspiration that I had, or things added that I was thinking that I wanted them in. So when a producer can produce and I'm writing, I can write right there and then. Or a producer can simply send me a song and I can literally write to it and say, hey, listen, I'm ready to record. Let's go. Let's make it happen. I've written a song in 10 minutes and I just got into the studio booth and went ahead and performed it. So I don't think that there's really so much of a method for me. However, sometimes as an artist, you do get a little foggy. Sometimes you don't really have the inspiration. You're like, oh no, I'll wait it off a little bit. So I'll start writing a song and I'm like, I don't think I want to finish it now. I don't think I'm ready for it now. Let me just wait a couple of days and see what happens. And then normally when I'm resting, all of a sudden at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't fall asleep and it comes to mind. And then I have to get out of bed, come to, my little studio or the living room and whatnot, and just start creating and start recording voice notes. and finishing it up. So a lot of times I cannot control when it happens. It just seems to happen. And it's so funny because they say, well, artists do get really creative late at night. And that is a reality. I do tend to get creative very late at night, and I can be sleeping and I'll just wake up and I'll just start creating. And it's always been like that for me. So I think that a lot of the songs, when I finish them or when I've, even written an entire song, has been like during the wee hours of the night.
That's a fascinating process. Now, when you go to record them, do you recruit the musicians yourself, or do you leave that to somebody in the studio? Another
It depends. It depends if it's a producer, and they're, how it is nowadays, producers can do great things in an in-home studio. It's not like before where you used to take all the musicians and you used to bring them into a studio and record. It's very different nowadays. However, like I said, I like to get very much involved. So I will say, well, I have this pianist, or I have this keyboard player, or I have this guitarist, a bass player. Let me call him up and tell him that I need him to lay this out for me really quickly and send him a reference of what I have. Or a producer can produce something for me and I say, well, you know what? I like it, but I want to add a piano, or I want to add, let me call my good friend who's an amazing bass player or an amazing guitarist, and let me have them lay something out for me really quickly and send them the reference. So that's normally how I'll go about it. Now, the other option is I used to have a live band. So, and I still have those same musicians that I can always just call them up and say, hey, listen, let's have a quick rehearsal and let's perform this song. So a lot of times I'll call them and say, hey, listen, I need to work on this with you. And I'll just go and do it live and have a quick rehearsal. And we come up with a song like that. And it's happened a lot of times. And the last couple, about 3 years ago, I was still performing. About 4 years ago, excuse me, I was still performing with my live band, and we would go and actually, I would sing the song, and everyone would just start creating right there and then, and magic happened. And I actually tend to love those sessions the most because everyone has like a nice piece of, they're creating. It's a collaboration, and I actually love that spark that just can come out. It's just improvising. There's just a magic in that I've never stopped loving. So if it were up to me, I'd prefer to do it live.
So had you been performing a long time when you started to do your own stuff, or did you always do your own material?
Well, had I been performing for a long time, in what sense? I want to make
performing on stage, surviving on music. Some people will do covers of other people's music before they get into writing their own songs.
It's interesting because I've always been performing since, I was younger. I would perform, in crowds of over 25,000 people, or perform in shows that were being viewed by millions of people. However, when I actually started really working in the music industry in New York, I had the opportunity and the blessings to start working with a lot of people in the music industry. And I just became a recording artist. I wanted to really kind of hone in on my work, and just before I even performed. But I did actually work with a lot of musicians or a lot of artists in the music industry and in their projects, and I was featured in them. And then, of course, I kept working on my own work separately. Yes. So I've always been working on my material, but when I started really, really, really performing it was probably, let's see, I would say after I moved to New York, I probably would say 2 years or 3 years later along the line, because I was doing the acting and focusing on that, when I started really performing and going out to venues and performing with different artists and different musicians.
Let's talk about the acting. What are you acting in? What have you done?
Well, right now it's very interesting. There's a lot going on. I'm preparing for, several projects, which I can't really talk about right now.
Okay.
But they are plays, and then there's a play, and then there are a couple of, short films and films that, I'm working on as an actor. However, I am currently, I played one of the leads in La Breve y Maravillosa Vida de Oscar Wilde. It's a play based on the novel The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz.
Junot Diaz, yes.
Yes. So it won a Pulitzer Prize in 2008. And it's very interesting. Just, it's such an amazing experience. We started actually in 2019, and it was just sold out like every single night and every single matinee, like sold out. Then the pandemic hit, and then there was a halt. Everyone, obviously, there was a halt with everything. And then we started again. We did the reopening in October, this past October 2021, which Lin-Manuel Miranda made it to the reopening of the show, that was actually very nice, very pleasant to see him there supporting right after Broadway was reopening again. And Junot Diaz made it himself, which it was just such a major blessing to meet him. He was very, very pleased and, with all of our work. And I spoke to him, privately, and he did express how much enthusiasm he felt watching the role that I played, that he created, which was, I was sort of like, what is he thinking? What is he thinking? But he was actually very pleased, and I was just very grateful. John Leguizamo, a lot of other artists, he was actually there as well. He was super nice too. A lot of other great artists have made it to go see the show. It's been such a blessing. It's really an amazing story, and it's really just making history. It's been making history again now after reopening. And I think it's such an important Latino story, Dominican family on stage, which is something that you've never really seen so much before, and it's in Spanish. However, it has English super titles, so anyone can actually go. We've been featured in the New York Times, and a lot of, we've been reviewed by a lot of people, in New York City. So it's been a nice journey. It's been a nice journey. So right now I'm currently with Repertorio Español, and I am performing as Lola, the sister, at La Breve Maravillosa Vida de Oscar Wilde.
Did you go to acting school, or are you self-taught?
I did. I actually went to Boston College, so I'm a BC alum, and one of my degrees was in theater arts. Yes. So I did study it, and it was intense. It was pretty intense.
I can't even imagine. I mean, what's unique about you is most artists that I've observed from afar, they'll get a musical hit, and they'll be popular, and then, I think I'll go into acting. Or the other way around. They'll be popular acting, and then they'll record a single. But you pursued both, it seems, simultaneously, with just as much action in both of them. And so you would not do one without the other. You have to do both.
It's interesting. A lot of people ask me, one of the main questions that I've gotten in my life is, which one do you prefer? And I'm like, well, to be quite honest with you, I mean, I love to sing. I don't think I can do without music. Honestly, I don't think I can do without music.
Yeah.
But I also love to act, because there's so much that you can do. There's so much that you can convey. When you're acting, your people are actually getting inspired. You're studying these roles. These, for example, I'm working on a project right now, which is one of the ones that I can't mention, but it's a very strong. It's so funny because I get these strong roles, and I'm so grateful for them. Lola, the sister in the play, she's extremely strong, very fierce. She's feisty. The second she comes on stage, forget it. Everyone knows she's there, and it's amazing. However, one of the roles that I'm working on right now is another role that's just incredibly phenomenal. It's touching, and it's based on real life. This lady that I'm, this woman that I'm portraying, and it's amazing how you get to really research these roles and find out what their strengths are, find out what their weaknesses are. Then you have to kind of go into, well, how would I feel? What experiences could I have had in the past, or close loved ones could have had in the past that I can relate it to? And then you kind of have to dig deeper in there to have those feelings, because these are really, really strong roles that you have to be really prepared. You have to really just kind of dig deep. You have to dig deep to feel those emotions. that these roles that you have to portray. So that's one of the things that I really honestly enjoy the most, that you get to touch people.
And that's the end of part one of Altagracia's interview. As you can see, she's a very determined person, a very positive person, and I can't wait for you guys to hear what she had to say when we come back next week for part two. Join us again next time, and until then, what do you want to do?